All right, hey everybody. I got I actually downloaded this book from a link from a mod on the Zen Garcia channel. The book is from the early 1900s, like 1904 or something, and it's called The Earth is Flat After All by Joseph Cooper. And I wanted to read a little bit of chapter 4 because it's very, very thought-provoking. Okay, here we go. The theory of having all of us sailing and whirling through space is quite faulty. The philosophers on astronomy of globular world fame tell us that men, women, and children riding at 1,040 miles an hour are unable to tell that they are moving at all. Ha! Of course, if we could tell that we are sailing and whirling in space, we would then know that the Earth is in motion. But for these astronomers to tell us we are all getting on at 65,000 or 68,000 miles an hour and whirling at the same time at the rate of 1,040 miles an hour, and no one be able to ascertain it, neither old or young, neither male or female, out of the millions of Earth today, it is a little hard on our crediting capacities or powers. It seems that some child or lad of a boy might be able to detect that we are on the move, or some old person having lived out his 60 and 10 years might look back upon some past event or information and inform us that by it he was perfectly sensible that the earth was in motion, or some extremely sensitive person, either old or young, might be able to detect the motion. Some people, are extremely susceptible to fast movement. They do not like to ride faster than a walk. And if you once got the idea uppermost in their minds that the earth were running away with them at the 65 miles an hour speed and whirling them over at the same time at the rate of 1,040 miles an hour, their sensibilities would be extremely wrought up. And if human detection could ascertain the earth to be in motion, they surely would be able to accomplish the task. And then it seems too that Edison or some inventor might be able to invent a machine or instrument of some kind by which we could detect the earth to be in motion. But as yet, nothing of the kind has ever occurred, and we are forever to remain in ignorance of the earth's mobility and rotundity so far as we are able to ascertain, except, of course, we can take the astronomer's word for it, as we have been doing, as unreasonable as it is. And we all stick to the earth when on the bottom side as well as when on the top side. But this is all accounted for, since they tell us there is something that attracts us to the earth, and it is not the actual weight of flesh and blood that presses us down upon it, quote unquote. Now, this seems a little absurd at first, to think that a philosopher on astronomy should make such a remark as the above, but when we take into consideration that his globular world theory is a flat failure if this be not true, then we can readily look for the wisdom and motive that caused it to be uttered. You see, if these globular world theorists admit that it is the actual weight in any matter that causes it to gravitate or fall to earth, their theory falls by their own admission, because if it be the weight of any person or substance whatever that forces it to the ground, then when the earth rolls us over onto the bottom side so that our feet are sticking up to the earth like a fly sticking up to the ceiling of a house. It's so funny. Okay, so then we go. And we, too, being destitute of the fly's apparatus to stay, our weight would tear us loose from the earth and we would go flying down in space, and there is no telling where we would land. But if flesh and blood has no weight, and it is altogether attraction that holds us to the earth, attraction can keep us sticking up to the earth when our feet are upward and heads downward, just as well if we were always on the top side of the earth with heads up and the soles of our feet on the earth. And hence they again admit, quote, that when we are weighed upon a pair of balances or scales, it is not us that are weighed at all, but it is that something called attraction that is weighed, end quote. Now if we take this view of the matter, everything is all right and perfectly harmonious and reasonable, provided you do not scrutinize the subject matter too closely. It, of course, will not bear anything like close and accurate investigation, and that just suits a great many people who are always learning, but never come to the knowledge of the truth. Well, if you take up the case of one of those fat, fleshy fellows who, when he steps upon the scales, tips them at just 300 pounds, and one of those ordinary persons, when he steps upon the scales, will tip them at 150 pounds, the lesser one being just half the size and just half the weight of the other, you can very readily see that the fat man, being as large again as the little fellow, he has as much again bulk for attraction to get hold of about him, and therefore he attracts the scales at 300 pounds, while the lesser man only attracts them at 150 pounds, their flesh and blood having no effect in the matter at all. Now there is no chance to defeat this argument in these two men, but one may assert that it is the flesh and blood that weighs 300 pounds in the large man, and the flesh and blood that weighs 150 pounds in the smaller man, and even then one only holds equal with the globular astronomist and simply settle nothing. You may, however, select a large man, one that is all swollen up with dropsy or some other disease, who is large enough to weigh 300 pounds, but really only weighs about half that much, and then the attraction theory rather gets the worst of it, because in that case, the swollen man being as large again as the small man, he ought to be large enough to possess enough of bulk for attraction to get such hold on him as to make him tip the scales at as much again as the little man. Now the astronomist may quake a little at the weight of the argument relative to the lean man and the swollen man, but he doubtless would say that there is not much attraction taking hold on a sick man to press him to the earth as there is taking hold on a well one. And this to him, of course, looks a little plausible, and hence he continues. If this were not true, then as we become antipodes once every 24 hours, since we must necessarily be on the bottom side of the earth once during that time, we would weigh more when we were on the top side, end quote, quote unquote. Yes, this is exactly it. If flesh and blood is what tips the scales and not attraction, then when a man got on the bottom side of the earth, his weight would naturally pull off from the earth, and he would not press the scales at all, but both the scales and himself would leave the earth and go away into unfathomable space below. So that's just a sample. Really interesting stuff. Early 1900 book. All right. Well, I'll leave the name of the author and the name of the book. Bye, guys. Peace.